Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Anita has joined us remotely. You're there, Anita? You can hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And this item 3.0, just a couple of comments. Glad to have everyone back from the break. I just want to acknowledge the communications that went out from the district, before the break regarding protocols and urging folks to stay safe over the break, to maintain masking and social distancing as they could. And I thought that was very good, and hopefully the community had the opportunity to see it and read it and take it to heart. Hopefully we've all come back healthy, safe, and we stay that way. I think one thing again in the district communication, and I think it bears to be reiterated, we're heading toward the end of the year, and our ability to finish the year out with those activities that are important to the senior class and to parents, to finish the sports year, to finish with graduation, in-person graduation, is really all contingent on everyone maintaining a close eye on those health and safety protocols and adhering to them as they best can. So I thought that was particularly good. And I want to acknowledge Patrick and Katie for getting that stuff out. I also just want to say just a little shout out. I was volunteering at the library. The Pat Free Library had a book sale this weekend, and there is a high school group, the Interact group, which works with the Rotary, the local Rotary, and I had the opportunity to work with some of those kids who helped out at the book sale. So a good group, and it's always nice to see more and RSU1 and more students out in the community doing those kinds of activities. So just a shout out to them. Okay, item 4.0, we have minutes from the meeting on March 22nd. Everyone will take a look or has taken a look. Take a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
A motion by Luana, second by Bill. Any comments, any corrections? If not, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Anita, you're gonna have to shout out.
Hi.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 5.0, adjustments to the agenda. Do you have anything, Patrick? No? Okay, thank you. Item 6.0, public comment. We have 3 folks who have asked to address the board. One is Dawn. I have her letter right here, but now I've lost it in the shuffle. Danielle Paus, and I don't know if she's going to call in or not, but we'll try to get him on the phone. So you want to bring up whoever you've got?
You want to start with Danielle?
Whatever works
Yeah,
for you.
whatever works best.
Okay, we'll do that.
No? No. Danielle?
Oh, hello.
Yeah, hi,
Hi.
this is Steve August from the RSU1 Board.
Hi there.
Hi. You asked to address the board and the floor is.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry, I haven't been able to get on yet. I just got out of work, but I did, and I sent a letter earlier today. I don't know if the board has had a chance to look it over, but I have major concerns about what's going on right now and our kids, the kids that aren't in school, and access to education. And anyway, I really want to know what we're doing to get this to happen sooner than later. I'm aware that it's mostly the state regulations, but I'm really hoping that we can get some leadership in our own school district. I know that teachers and administrators that I've spoken to want to get the kids back to school, and it's the state restrictions. So I think as a parent, I just really feel that it's time to get the kids back to school, because this has gone on for a very long time, and it's hard to justify out-of-state tourists coming in, people going out for dinner, shops being open, and yet Maine children still aren't in school 5 days a week. It seems crazy to me.
Okay. We did, your letter was forwarded to the board kind of late this afternoon, so we will get your full letter into the record for sure. And we do have items on the agenda, later on the agenda, which will give you an update, you and others on the listening in on the meeting, an update of where we are with our plans to return students to the classroom. So, but thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I'll definitely tune into the meeting. I was planning on getting on as soon as I got home. So thank you for your time. And I hope that everybody can work together to get these kids back in school.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Kyle. Hello, Kyle.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, this is Steve August, Kyle, from the RSU1 School Board.
How you doing?
Good, good. You had asked to address the board, and you have the floor.
All right. I'm on?
You're on? Yes, you are.
All right. Hi. Thank you for taking my call, everybody. I haven't been on the meeting. I've been busy, but so I don't know what's been said or who said what, but I have a written statement here that I'd like to read. So here we go. Dear RSU1 School Board and Superintendent Manuel, we can all agree that this year has been a logistical challenge in education. I want to take a moment to commend the support staff, teachers, and all the administrators in RSU1, plus the school board, who have worked hard to make sure our students have not only received an education, but have made sure that our students have been fed, coached, have been provided with counseling and so many other services this year. I'm especially grateful and appreciative of all the work that has been done to get our pre-K to 8 students back into full-time and in-person learning. I'm here to speak today, however, because RSU1 has yet to develop a plan to get our high school students back to in-person learning 5 days a week. I know that Mr. Varney has looked into getting our students back. He and I have spoken about the logistical difficulties that Morse, the school facilities provide. he has shared that he cannot fit the more students under the current CDC guidelines. And I trust that he has done what he can to examine the space at Morse. He's also shared that the RSU expects come fall, the CDC will lift these guidelines and our high school students will be able to make a full return. This, I think we'd all agree, would be a welcome change. I teach middle school, as many of you know, and I know firsthand how challenging it is to teach with the 3-foot guidelines, as well as all the other guidelines that we have to keep our kids and ourselves safe. But I don't accept that we as a community are simply relegated to sit and wait, sit here and do nothing and hope that the CDC will change the rules by next August. First of all, there's no evidence I have seen to suggest that this will happen. Even if there were evidence, there is no way to know that those guidelines are going to change. We just cannot see into the future. So for the leadership of this district to simply sit on its hands and wait for August, in my opinion, is irresponsible. So I speak here today to Mr. Manuel and to the board. You have about 4 months, and there's like $400 million that the federal government has given to Maine for this purpose, to reopen schools. And now is the time to make a plan, or I would suggest making several plans. It is possible the CDC will change the guidelines and you won't need these plans, and that would be great. But, you know, in my opinion, good leadership requires you to make the plans nevertheless. Plans for students to be in school 5 days a week under the current CDC guidelines, under the changed CDC guidelines, or maybe under no CDC guidelines. Make plans for all of it. It may seem impossible, but I think time and time again, we've seen effective leaders can look at the impossible and find the possible. Our students need to be in school, and our families need our kids in school. This is not just simply an issue of me, a parent worried about my child's learning loss. Getting our kids back to school is a community issue. This is a mental health issue. This is an economic issue. And if you don't make these plans to get our kids back to school now, I feel like you're gambling with our kids and the health and the well-being of our community. Thank you for taking the time to hear me. And I look forward to seeing these plans over the coming weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Have a good evening.
Yep, you too. Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, we have Wu Dunn.
Steve? Is that the first name of the first person to speak? I didn't catch that. The woman who's going.
Danielle Paus, P-A-U-S.
It'd be nice if they could say that. If they're comfortable.
Hi, Ru.
Hey, good evening. How are you?
Good, how you doing?
Doing well.
This is Steve August with the RSU1 Board. You've asked to address us tonight, school board.
Yes, thanks for letting me, thanks for the opportunity. My question is really follows a little bit on Kyle's just a moment ago, and it largely goes to the proposed budget. And I'm looking kind of for the same assurance. That is, did the budget, and I would be surprised, but I'd like to know that I am surprised. Does the budget accommodate, for example, in the world of in the technology budgeting, does it accommodate funding to properly implement and make and correct the implementation of Brightspace? Does it provide for adequate training so that the faculty can correctly and consistently use it? Does it provide enough staff to properly support students and parents? You've got two sets of constituents to support. That's on the technology side. On the classroom side, as Kyle remarked, in primary school at Fisher Mitchell, for example, there's been almost no science, almost no social studies. What plans are built into that budget to make up for that? Is there going to be extra course? Is there extra faculty? Are we opening up more classrooms? We have a building we haven't sold yet. Are we staffing that? Are we building up our stable of potential applicants? Something that we now have months of opportunity to exercise the vision to see what we could do as opposed to how little we can do. So I'm looking for an assurance and a discussion. I'm happy to be engaged. That some of this is actually going on. I can't tell necessarily from the draft budget.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Did you have more comments? No?
No?
No? Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Ruth. It's our policy not to engage in discussion. I think you raised some interesting questions, very specific questions on bright space and technology and what's in the budget. And we will try to tease those answers out as we have our discussion later tonight and going forward in discussion of the budget. So,
all right.
Thank
you so much, and I'm happy to be engaged offline if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for raising it.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Okay. I thank those folks who called in with public comment. 7.0, as I noted to Rue and Danielle, and did not mention to Kyle, but we do have later items on the agenda that will address school reopening at the middle school and at Morse. So hopefully those folks can stay in the meeting and as we reach those items on the agenda. 7.0 committee reports. 7.1 facilities committee update. Packer, Bill?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we met one more time, reviewed, I believe we've already discussed some of the repairs that were necessary at Woolwich and the ongoing heating issue at Dyke Newell and the roof problem there in a small area of the roof. In addition to that, we started talking about the summer program. As Dave puts together every summer, the ongoing maintenance and even more important this summer because of the sanitation issues and all of the things that we're addressing in pandemic times. Dave's with us in virtual, and I'm sure he would be very happy to, if you wish, to talk about any pressing budget issues and his summer plans.
Okay, Dave, you there?
It's a big deal up there.
Dave?
Hello, Dave.
Can you hear me?
Oh, thank you, Richmond.
So,
Dave, any highlights you want to give us about just summer work?
Can you hear me?
No, can't hear you.
Okay, hold on. Trying. How about now?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right. So what was the question, please?
About just highlight any summer projects that you have coming up.
Yep. Summer projects. We are wrapping up the old high school as we're turning that lease over to them. So we got a lot of work to get out of there. And then we have summer work. We've got Pittsburgh replacing the gym door down there. And then we've got Fish and Mitchell. We're replacing exterior doors there. They're the original 1956 as built. So we got our money's worth there. We got a lot of kitchen work going on this year. We got some 2 dishwashers going in, stoves from the old school being put on the other schools. We got a dishwasher down in Pittsburgh, a dishwasher over in Dyke Newell, a new roof at Dyke Newell over the gymnasium. So, you know, we got a pretty full plate for the summer.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Any questions for Dave or Bill?
Folks have asked what we're doing with the equipment at the old high school. And Dave is in fact utilizing, I think, a dishwasher from there. So we're doing what we can to utilize equipment before it's turned over.
Yep, thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
I thought that'd be one of, for that, come towards Bill. If there's equipment that's not necessary or usable in other parts of the school and isn't a physical part of the building, does that belong to the RSU and would we sell that off?
It's ours until the turnover, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we've had is we've had our own staff come through and take whatever they'd like.
Okay.
And then we have reached out to the municipalities and they came in over break and they, you know, anything that they, for the town to be able to use. And then our next step in the process is to figure out a way to open it up to the community and how best to do that for people to come in and is it done by donation? Is it, you know, that type of thing. So I don't know how many days we would offer that for people to come in and be able to have a process that works seamlessly, which we've reached out to a couple of the school systems that have been through this before, because obviously it helps stage crew. The more people take, better off we are. So.
After municipalities, has anyone asked the local nonprofits in the area?
We planned to, but we stopped at municipalities, which is I think last Friday, Thursday or Friday. So our next step would be, you know, we got to figure out our next couple steps there.
And it's giving, donating.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, you know, when people come in as individuals, even is they're coming through and hopefully make a donation instead of us trying to price everything that's in there. So
The regulations on selling it or auctioning it are really pretty onerous.
The other
Yeah,
thing
in
that I
many ways,
wanted
it's
to
much
ask
easier
the
to
superintendent perhaps,
donation.
I noticed that, in the paper that Midcoast Hospital was looking to utilize some classroom space for training. Does that mean some of our equipment, which is currently sitting there, will have to be utilized in that program?
yeah, we've met with them and actually we're reviewing a lease right now, and we'll probably bring that to the board next Monday as, you know, one agenda item, because it's just really about budget next Monday. But I need some time to look at that and the city. So it's a Maine Health, Maine Health, Midcoast Hospital, the city, and the RSU signing a lease together because they're going to come in starting in June and use mostly the vocational side of the building. And so they'll be using some of our equipment, but then they'll be they're supplying all their own technology and any equipment, like tables and other things that they might need as well. Yep.
Okay.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
More of a reminder, and anyone can chime in. Dave, the benchmark contract, is that annual or is that semi-annual? What's that term?
Biannual or triannual? I'd have to ask Deb Clark on that one. Can't renew. Remember which one we renew every 3 years or 5 years?
I believe that the current one is 3 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And do you remember if that comes up this year or if we're just in the middle?
We just approved it. This is the first year of so we have 2 more years on it.
Okay. And I also just need a reminder, is that something that, is there like an evaluation process at the end of every year or ongoing as far as services being met?
Ongoing.
Okay. Okay, that was my question.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for no? For Dave? Okay, 7.2 legislative update. Warner?
Yes, so the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee is really busy. As Patrick told me, it would ramp up, and it has. So obviously I'm not going to go down through every single position on every bill right now, but there was one that Patrick shared with me from Maine School Management, and also Maine School Boards Association has some concerns on and currently is not in support of. So what I'm going to do is give an overview of that, and then Patrick and Justin, who's online, can chime in to help answer any questions. But before I get to the bill, let me just say sort of the timeline. March 30th, the legislature passed the state budget, 2-year budget, with an additional $45 million for public schools, and then adjourned. In order for that budget to take effect, they needed 90 days before July 1st in order for that to technically go into effect. But committees, like I said, the committee's still been meeting and hearing public testimony and voting out bills. They're hoping to re-adjourn the legislature this week to start voting, so it'll get more active on actual the voting process. And so the bill that is getting a lot of buzz is LD 552, an act to strengthen the individualized education program process, or IEP process. And again, I'll have Justin kind of chime in what this essentially means, and Patrick, but it's requiring a parent to provide informed consent prior to any proposed change in an IEP. Some of the concerns are a fiscal impact to school administrative units. If there's not consensus on an IEP and the school wants to initiate due process, that could be an increased fiscal impact. Let's see, they have some numbers anticipated, and this is where I want to ask some questions on as well. It says the SAU cost would be, for complaint investigations, could be up to $600,000. And I don't know if that's statewide. I'm assuming that's statewide. Yeah, I would imagine. There's concerns that parents would be able to mandate curriculum and staffing for their child if there was not an agreement or consensus on IEP. But then the proponents of the bill, Disability Rights Maine, kind of have a point-by-point refute to the concerns on the bill. So I don't know if I explained that appropriately, but Patrick or Justin, if you want to let the board know essentially what that means, if the bill, it did come out of committee, ought to pass.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? This is Justin.
Yes.
I guess. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, LD 552 really changes in a lot of ways how we currently conduct IEP meetings. First, the concern around consensus. So typically, obviously, we strive for everybody to be on the same page at an IEP meeting, but that doesn't always happen. And, under the current law, school districts have the opportunity to implement program they feel is appropriate. And then there's a process for parents to sort of contest that. This sort of changes that a little bit, where a parent can contest that. And then there's a rule in special education law currently called stay put. And that would be triggered by this new law. So basically, if a parent disagreed with a change a school district was trying to make to a student's IEP, they could institute stay put. And, it puts us in a position where maybe the district isn't feeling like we're providing appropriate programming for students. And that's a long process. You know, if we are in stay put, we go to, you know, mediation, due process hearings, those types of things. So it could be a while where a student is in a program where, you know, the district might not feel is appropriate. And then, you know, the fiscal piece was mentioned. And the biggest concern right now is if a parent files due process on a district, it is covered most of the time covered by insurance. But with this bill, it would really put us in a position where districts would need to consider filing due process hearings because our students aren't in appropriate programming, and a parent doesn't agree, and we're in that stay put that I mentioned. And the problem is that currently that's not covered by insurance, so it'd be a big expense to districts, and they'd have to make the decision on whether or not to keep kids in an inappropriate placement or head to litigation. So that's my 2 cents on it currently.
Thanks, Justin.
I just had a few questions too on it. Like one of the points made by Disability Maine was that on the fiscal impact, it said complaint investigations cannot be initiated by schools. So is that, and I know we're not here to debate the whole bill, but
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Lorna.
No, go ahead.
No, so yes, complaint investigations are initiated by DOE, but when we get a complaint investigation, many times we have to involve our attorneys, so we handle that tactfully, and so the cost will come on to districts in that way. Typically, we don't try and take those on by ourselves unless they're something we feel really comfortable with, but we would be more than likely using our attorneys to help us through that, adding to our expenses.
Thank you. So I can just keep Patrick and I can stay in touch, and I can stay in touch with the MSBA, and if there's any other action that we need to take as far as any other further questions or clarity or even a position, just keep me in the loop or let me know if you want me to do any extra digging or what have you. And then like I said, there's just countless bills, and anyone can go on the committee and see what's coming up or sign up for all the notifications for hearings. And then another one that, Steve, you had mentioned that bills pertaining to policy or reversal of policy, you'd be interested in hearing about. And just this morning, there was public testimony on LD 474, and that's the act regarding school discipline for Maine's youngest children. This kind of went away last year, but it's back this year. I read over some of the testimony that was submitted this morning. There was more testimony in favor of the bill than opposition, although clearly Maine School Board Association is in opposition to it. And essentially, it's anyone under grade 5 or below, no longer, the use of suspension cannot be utilized, but more importantly on the bill, it also includes some other things like abstention of recess and things like that. So I'm not saying one way or the other how we should think on it, other than it would be a policy change, and it would be less of a local control. So I don't know how that came out of committee today, or if it came out yet. But that's all I had to report for today.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. Any questions, Lorna?
I think the sped bill has come before the legislature. The IEP issue, I think this has come, I want to say like in the 143rd or something. I think I remember something like this, and I think it was, anyway. So my question on that would be, if it came out of the committee unanimous?
I can tell you that right now. Well, I have okay, let me give you the MSBA first.
You can tell a lot about how it's going to clear the floor if something comes out unanimous or not.
Well, MSBA just says oppose, nothing on committee position.
Okay.
And then MSMA.
Maybe it hasn't had a work session. Was this a work session or a public hearing?
It has gone. I don't actually know. I don't know if see, I'm looking at MSBA and I'm looking at MSMA.
All Vicky said was it came out of the education committee as ought to pass, but it didn't
Okay,
say.
so it hasn't worked, they've voted on it, but we don't
No,
unanimous.
it hasn't
Okay.
been voted on. No, just ought to pass.
Okay.
That's from the MSMA update.
So my question, I guess, is, I don't know who it's for, but like if we, in looking at these bills, if a board feels strongly enough about something, what's the process? Do we send a letter, a resolution, a letter of support, of opposition? I've not really been part of that before, so I don't know, Patrick, is that something that, or Steve, is this just informational or is it?
I mean, tonight we were sharing as informational, but, as Laura and I have chatted kind of behind the scenes, is just, if a board member, through MSBA or if the district, going up and testifying or again, submitting something in support of something or opposition to something. So, we can certainly do that, as a school district.
Right, it would, but they would go as their individual, not representing the board unless we were a unanimous support of it, right? Okay.
What was that? It would be as a board rep, right?
Yeah.
As long as we had all said, agreed.
Yeah, as long as we discussed it and agreed to the.
Right.
Right.
Gotcha, okay.
And in reading the testimony on that other bill today, that, there was the obvious stakeholders, Maine Principal Association, MSBA, DOE, but lots of parents also provided testimony in favor of it. So
I swear this bill has come. Remember, like the 143rd or the 142nd. Yeah.
A lot of things get
And it
introduced and reintroduced.
Yeah. Under Baldassi's last administration, I think.
In my time on board, I don't remember us taking a board position, which doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's just I'm not sure we've done it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, Lorna? Thanks, Lorna. Thank you. 7.3, high school building project update. Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, just a couple items. The auditorium can now be used by students and staff. It's still that, the final sign off will probably happen at the end of this week because we have an expert, that's coming in to kind of do that final punch list on Thursday of this week. Speaking of the punch list, I mean, we started with about, 4,500 items on a punch list, and now we're down to 300. So it's very positive. I know it's 300 might seem like a lot, but it doesn't to us. And Harvey is now not there any longer at night. They're just coming when they've organized enough subcontractors to come in and do work. So it's on an as-needed basis. And then Crooker, we met with them recently, and there's still some work to be done on the grounds, and that will be done this spring into the summer, as well as a couple other items up by the turf fields and the canopy. We need to organize that for the summer, hopefully by the end of June, 1st of July for those pieces. But overall, it's gone well, and we're making progress, and we don't have to talk about it as much, which is a good thing. So it's, I really think it's gone well, and we'll continue to set up tours. We had a couple of tours come through a couple of weeks ago, and we'll try to get more tours set up.
So we're well within our contingency allotment.
Yes, I mean, we've got some, we've got bills that, are coming in, mostly for, some furniture items and equipment that we found we needed, if we needed to fix certain things or something we thought we were getting, but we didn't get, a couple of examples of this, shelving in the library that came in this week. And actually, I forgot to mention that we did move over all of our library as well as all of the auditorium belongings that we had the week before vacation. And so that's been done, but there's just little things that, like some of the trophy cases and display cases, they didn't have a shelf in there. So there were just these big, tall things that, just look weird. So we needed to buy those. Just, again, little things. It could be mechanical, but it could be aesthetic that we've had to purchase. But no, from a budget standpoint, we're in good shape, but we still need to monitor it.
Yep. Any questions of Patrick on the building? Pretty soon we won't be talking about it. We'll just be experiencing it.
I don't know if this is a building question or a budget question. Should I hold off and wait until we talk about budget stuff?
Well, If it relates to the construction project it's building.
Okay, well, I just saw an Instagram posting recently for a pole vault pit. A bunch of people sitting on a bunch of equipment and they're saying it was a brand new equipment for the pole vault pit. Is that not correct? It was
That would be down can. That wouldn't be.
The pole vault pit, we're buying out of this year's budget.
that's what I thought, and then
We removed it from, it was in the original budget here, and due to some savings that we had in athletics this year, we were able to purchase it this year,
okay,
so.
okay. Because I thought it was in the budget we're looking at here,
No,
and I was trying to figure out.
That last budget meeting, we
Put it over,
took it
thank
out.
you,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
But that's going down in the can.
This big man field, yep.
Yep. Okay, any other questions for Patrick? No? Okay, thanks. 8.0, student board report. Tanner, Jonah, you have this well choreographed, I'm sure, so we'll pass it on.
All right, I'll start us off. As Steve said at the beginning of the meeting, last week was April break, so students had some time to charge our batteries and get ready for the final push of school. I'd like to honor, congratulate, recognize 7 seniors who qualified for the Seal of Literacy. This was myself, Eleanor Carrollton, Acadia Morse, Kaylin Anderson, Allison Ziliazar, Evan Willers for Spanish, and Ian Powers for French. On April 11th, I believe, seniors had the polar plunge on Head Beach to raise money for project graduation. And project graduation paperwork is now due May 12th, so we can hopefully have a graduation as planned and then celebrate.
It's been a pretty busy stretch for juniors. SAT scores were just returned, so that's exciting. Leading into testing coming up with the ACT this coming Wednesday for those who signed up, and AP tests. So those courses are winding down. The Morse Green Club installed some bike racks that were made out of sustainable materials from old recycled bikes, which have been pretty useful thus far, and they were entered into a statewide competition, and I think they made it pretty far in the competition for the best sustainable project by a school green club. And the Morse One Act play, which I am in, written by senior Katie Card, is called Dear Childhood, and is set to take place outdoors on the 5th, 6th, and 7th Blood Independence.
Great. Any questions of here? I drove by the school the other day. I saw the bike racks. They're really impressive. Really impressive. How's the school breaking in? Is it?
Pretty good. There were issues in the very first weeks with some intercoms not working, some heating systems not working, but those have begun to be worked out as time's gone on. I think students have a very positive image of it. They really enjoy the new school.
Yeah, I mean, it's just starting to feel like school, like not the new school, it's just school again.
So as a senior, Tanner, you're thinking of moving on, getting into college. What you're confronted with is the same kind of uncertainty as far as college schedules as you've experienced for high school schedule. I mean, well, how's your class dealing with that?
I mean, it's a lot more out of our control because we don't have parents in our collegiate communities that can reach out to. It's not as tight knit as Bath, it's a greater Bath area, but it's shaky. But I mean, I have faith in the colleges that I'm considering, and I believe other seniors have faith in the colleges that I'm considering.
Any questions of Tanner?
I have one thing I just wanted to say. I just wanted to say to the senior class that I was impressed that I saw it on the digital sign this morning, that what is your slogan? To make a commitment to stop the spread or what have you. I don't know who came up with that from the senior class, but it was nice to see something from the student body asking the community to help to ensure that you can have your end of year events.
Yeah, I mean, leading up to break and coming out of break has been a huge focus for us. We all want to graduate, and we want to be at graduation when we graduate, and we all want to be there with our families when we graduate. Mm-hmm. So it's becoming more and more, difficult. Obviously, it's getting warmer. We all want to be outside and hanging out, and
Fair.
get close and kind of not follow those protocols on accident, but we just have to remember and stay strict because we want to be there when we graduate.
I started on the sign and I just wanted to acknowledge that it is noticed, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, both. 9.0 superintendent's report. Good news. I can't imagine you didn't have the same comment as Tanner just.
Just a couple items of virtual author visits. I think you saw those at multiple schools. And again, our schools are trying to do as much as we typically do for our students, but obviously a lot of it is virtual. But Kate Messner worked with 2 of our schools, and she spent time talking about her books, talking about her life, but also walking students, young students, through the writing process, which I think is very important. So that's happening at 2 of our elementary schools. On May 10th, Fish and Mitchell will host a virtual visit from the Portland stage. And the theme is about big feelings, processing and embracing emotions. And this will be followed up on May 13th with a virtual author visit as well. Theater's already been mentioned. Bath Tech, I don't know if you saw that, but their recruitment process is done, so to speak. And, things can change, numbers can go up and down a little bit. But we admitted 189 first-year students among our 11 programs. And again, that would include the cosmetology. And with returning students, we expect to see enrollment around 270 in the fall. And, just as a comparison purposes, in the fall of 2018, we started the year with 189.
Wow.
So,
Big deal.
yeah, so it is a big increase, which we're excited about and can handle. Adult ed graduation, May 25th, that's virtual. And then hopefully you saw it on Alan's report as well, that, adult ed and Morse are working, in collaboration with BIW to help determine I would say a pathway where students would be, so to speak, BIW ready. That's kind of into the beginning stages. So as far as the role at BIW, those things are still being kind of worked out. But again, trying to have another career pathway for some of our students, so when they step out of Morse or step out of adult ed, that they could possibly take advantage of that.
Congratulations. That's a long time coming. That's wonderful.
So,
Okay, thanks. Any questions of Patrick? No? Thank you. 9.2, Deb, financial report.
Okay, for the financial report, just we're 9 months into the fiscal year, so we're nearing the end at the end of March, so we have 3 more months to go. At this point in time, we've spent about $25.5 million out of our $38 million budget. We have about $9 million encumbered for salaries and benefits to carry us through the end of the year. And at this point, it's showing that we have 10%, we'll have 10% remaining, which this is always overstated because it doesn't take into account the items that aren't encumbered, which is all your utilities to operate your buildings and transportation, tuition and those types of things. So we're still in a good place. And obviously we're not spending as much in every area. So we certainly will take that into account as we move forward from year to year, as to help out our beginning balance when we budget. Our revenues, we're about $28 million. So we're at 73%. So those are coming in, monthly as we expect. And for our Morse High School project, where I have 1.4 million showing as a balance. So like Patrick said, we are still within the budget. This is just finalizing some final payments, and so we're in a good spot there. As far as our federal funds, we are also where we expected to be in the ESRF1 funds. We have 1 more year to support the school nurse in Pittsburgh, so we're within that budget and that plan. CRF1, which is finished at the end of June, we will definitely have spent the majority of that money. CRF2, we're also spending as planned. And then the ESERF 2 is the new grant, which will be for 2 years. That's the 1.8, and that is where, like Mr. Dunn had asked earlier, as far as funding to pay for technology and staffing. That's where that those funds will be utilized to pay for those things for next year and the year after. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Any questions of Deb? The federal funds can be used for summer school too, is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks,
You're
Deb.
welcome.
Find myself on the list. Item 10.0, no old business, I guess. 11.0, new business. We have a couple of resignations and retirement. Patrick?
Yeah, I'd just like to recognize the people. We have 2 resignations. First is Jackie Olson, grade 1 teacher at Woolwich, and the best that we can tell from our records, she's been in the district 32 years in various roles. So some support roles and also as a teacher, classroom teacher. So thank you, Jackie, for your service to the district. Suzanne Davey, social studies teacher at the high school. Thank her for 7 years she's been with us. And then 11.1B is a retirement, and that is Shelley Nutter, who's a math teacher at Morse, and would like to thank her for 37 years in our district.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks to those 3 teachers for their dedication and to the RSU. 11.2 personnel item. This is an action item, and it relates to hiring of a cosmetology instructor for the tech center. Patrick, do you want to do this?
It's my pleasure to nominate Jillian Sawyer to be the new or the one and only cosmetology teacher that we've had in the district. We had 6 applications, interviewed 3 people, and the team, you can see, was comprised of an administrator, 4 teachers, and 1 community member. And you can see Jill's licenses, education, and also her experience. A lot of people, I'm sure, are familiar with her in the community. So we're excited to nominate her to you tonight. So she will be, she'll be kind of serving in a consultant role that we're going to be using, to get the program up and running this spring, and then she'll be, our full-time teacher in the fall next year for the new program.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Do I have a motion to hire?
A second.
I'm searching for the word.
I'll second Patrick. Oh, no, the motion.
You're making the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Jennifer moves that we hire Jillian Sawyer, and Bill, you second it, right?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? I don't know if do you know what our enrollment is for that program?
Julie, how many first year students do we have signed up?
We have 14 first year students for 11th graders, and we've admitted, I think, 12 12th grade first year students.
Wow, that's great.
Great.
So the first year 11th grade is full. We have 1 or 2 openings for 12th graders to get 1 year of the program.
Well, you promised it would be a very successful program if we were to add it to the tech center.
She was right.
So you're right.
Here we go. It's a good start.
It's good.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? No. Anita? Okay. 11.3. Another action item, and that's the approval of the list of probationary teachers, which you have in your packet. Patrick,
Yeah, I mean, by statute, the board has to approve these, and it's, the spreadsheet we sent you is the first 8, I think it is, are going from probationary 1 to 2. And then the second group is going from probationary 2 to 3. And then the last group is going from probationary 3 to continuing contract. And so we sent a backup to you to explain the process that was used this year and that was followed by our administrators. So I think that's it. I did say also though that, that first group that you see on this list, that they're going from 1 to 2, and they were hired in 2021, so they only have a 2-year probationary period because that's changed. It was 3 years for I don't know how many years, several years, and now it's changed back to just a 2-year probationary period.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve. Motion by Lou,
I'll second.
second by Lorna. Any questions, discussion? Jennifer?
This is my yearly thing when it comes to this, is that people here might already know, or new people. I have concerns about our role in this process because we don't really know anything about what happens. We just are asked to make the decision at the end. But one of the things I was kind of wondering about is if maybe I could get a description, a little bit about an education, a little bit about what's the difference between being a probationary teacher and a continuing contract. Specifically when it comes to the process of each year, when the contracts go out, when contract decisions are made by the principal, what's the difference between being a probationary contract or being a continuing contract? How is it different how does that impact the school, and also how does that impact the teacher? I don't remember talking about that, but maybe we have. Apologize if it's a configuration.
I mean, we can put something together for you and get that, and kind of do a report on that if you'd like.
Okay.
So you're talking about what the agreement itself, how the
What's
agreement is different?
what's the difference? Like, why have a continuing contract? How does that impact the teacher? How does it impact the school? How does it, how do things change? How are things handled differently between someone on 2 different contracts? And I guess, we've heard about the process to evaluate teachers. And we've heard about all those steps, and we've got the additional information about how differently that is this year. But I guess I was kind of wondering what is the process when a teacher is recommended for a continuing contract? Is there a review of the documentation about their about how their evaluations have taken place over the 3 years? Does that documentation get reviewed by anybody, or is this just solely on the recommendation from the principal?
No, I mean, all their paperwork, their observations, their summative evaluations come to Katie and I as well.
Okay.
The principals meet with them. We don't meet unless it's, requested or required, or we feel like we need to be involved. And then it comes to us as well, and it's, read through, and if there's any questions before we make that decision, then that's the process that we go through before that.
All right. Because I realized I hadn't asked that question before, and so I was like, oh, I've been doing this for so long. How would if I haven't, been listening to it for a long time, how would anyone else? So that's good to know. Okay, I think those are my questions on that, and then just, I guess, to get a little more education on why the continuing contract and how it is different.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the list? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 11.4. This is our public forum on the proposed FY22 budget. This is another opportunity for the board. I mean, there were some questions that came in from the public, but I'm not sure that they weren't addressed, and some of them were substantively different, dealing with classes rather than budget. But Deb or Patrick, do you want to walk through where we are at this point?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, I handed this out to you tonight just because last week, we got some word that we received some additional subsidy in the area of vocational. And so Deb made those adjustments, to this budget. So right now you can see the local contributions, 1.85%. And then the total revenue and expenses, it's 1.74. So this is lower. And then under the towns, it's 4.87% increase for Rouseck, 1.32 for Bath, Pittsburgh 4.53, and Woolwich 1.01. And so that's just, it's not a huge change, but it is a change that some people will be happy to see. Deb, anything you want to add? Big picture, anything else?
Just the happy thing is that it's gone down a little.
Yeah.
No, I think basically this is where we're at as far as the latest subsidy figures. After we present this tonight, then tomorrow I will send this along to the towns. And then I haven't received any feedback or any questions from anybody at this point, but then our next process will be May 3rd, which we will have our second public hearing, and hopefully we can wrap up warrant articles. As far as anything that we've discussed in the past for any expenditures, that everything's pretty much the same as what we've talked about from the beginning.
And just I know Deb mentioned it before, but we do have obviously money built into this budget for the day-to-day operations of the school. But the primary funding that we will use for any type of technology purchases or training or additional staffing will be coming from that the federal money. And we are meeting again this week with our elementary, middle, and high school separately to talk about next year, developing plans simultaneously. If there's social distancing, how do we get everybody into our schools? And if there's not social distancing, what that will look like. Looking at our distance learning staff that we have right now and seeing if we need all of that staff. And so we are developing kind of two plans at all levels to prepare for next fall.
Yeah, I didn't notice this before, but you have tuition on your sheet has an asterisk, and I don't see where that asterisk is blamed anymore.
Well, I can see that I missed the asterisk, but down underneath that first box, well, on top of that first box, it has tuition revenue.
So
and that's where the asterisk should be. That basically breaks out how I came up with that figure. The total number of students from elementary and secondary from Georgetown, West Bath, and RSU 12. So 148 students make up that $1.5 million tuition revenue.
The additional vocational money is about $50,000, is that right?
That was the change in the local contribution, yes. And then just a reminder, just to point out once again that we're using a larger balance forward than what we have in the past, and that's because we have had additional expenses that we, basically a larger beginning balance because we haven't spent as much money over the past year. So that was a big help there. I think that's basically about it.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Yeah.
So I know we're getting to this tonight. We're approving it tonight, but this includes the new bus contract, right? The cost of this, cost of the bus contract was in here and came in within, okay.
Yes.
Good, great, fabulous. And again, this is non-labor, right?
No.
This is everything.
This is everything.
But we don't have non-labor numbers quite yet, do we?
We don't have labor.
Labor con, yeah, thank you.
We don't have all of them. Yeah, we don't have every single detail, but it's a
Okay.
projection.
Okay,
But anything we're asking for is included here.
right, okay. Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Luana?
I just had a few quick comments. One is just kind of following up to Mr. Dunn's comment when he was asking about resources available for technology, and I know our response was that much of that is supported by the COVID relief that we have, and that's good for 2 years. So I've mentioned before on Finance Committee, I think that's great that we are funding our new Bright Space and other programs out of that money. But just moving forward, just making sure we understand what the local impact of that's going to be as we continue forward, and making sure that we're totally sold on whatever we've obtained during this period of responding to the pandemic. And then the other piece, just obviously we'll need to keep watch on, is that our enrollment's down. And so I know that 21-22 figure is based on October as best, and I know that fluctuates. But when we start thinking about 22-23, I think it'll be helpful for me in future meetings to, when you know or have kind of an idea of what it's going to look like in the fall, that'll be helpful, even just to get it in my head. And so we can all have a report on that. Because next thing you know, we're going to start looking at the 22-23 budget. But other than that, I didn't have any other comments or questions. I think you've all gone over it pretty thoroughly.
I think as we've discussed in the Finance Committee, I mean, we've been pretty mindful not to put things, not to, incur new activities and costs using that federal money, but always with an eye forward of how, if we will, how to continue that with the local budget. So I think we've been pretty cautious not to put many demands on the federal money that we can't, that we haven't thought about in terms of how they would be funded when those dollars are no longer available. It's a very, it seems to me anyways, a very fair budget, fair to the community, fair to the kids. We've managed to support some more gifted and talented hours here, and a grade 6 science teacher at the middle school. There are some things that the administration asked for initially, which are not included here, but I think Patrick and has tried to accommodate our guidance, I'll call it, which is to keep the budget in I won't say in check. That implies it's out of control sometimes. I'm not sure it ever is, but at least present to our communities a fair budget, understanding that municipalities and families are under stress as well. So hopefully the board agrees, and hopefully our community agrees that this is a good budget for next year. Any comments? I misspoke last time. We don't actually take a vote on the budget. We'll act on it May 3rd, next week, when we have our second hearing, second public hearing, reading. But if there are any questions or concerns, this is certainly the time to raise them. If not, we'll move on to the next item. Great. Thank Lou, thank the administration, thank everyone on the board who's participated in the Finance Committee for pulling it together. Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, item 11.5, this is an action item. We have the 2021-2022 school calendar. Katie, Patrick?
So the calendar has a very similar structure to how this year was intended to be before we had to put many more PD days because of the pandemic at the beginning. So it follows the usual 2 professional development days at the start, 1 in October, 1 in November, 1 in March. And they essentially, there's no real surprises here. We're within the 5 allowed dissimilar days with the schools that are part of the Bath Tech campus, and it was pretty straightforward. I'm not sure I have anything else to add. Questions?
Any questions for Katie? That's an action item. So, Jennifer?
So I just got the feedback from a parent in Woolwich saying how difficult it was to try to find childcare for that 1 hour on Wednesdays. And haven't heard much more from that. I've reached out to some of the local people to try to find out, are there any options? I haven't found any options in Woolwich at all that would help a parent. And the comment was just, it was harder. It was harder to get 1 hour coverage every week versus a whole day, before we were doing late start Wednesdays. Has there been any, do we could just continue with that at some point? Do we evaluate? Is it something that works really well with the schools? Do we ever check in on that in terms of that structure?
Sure, and please, you know more of the history than I do, so please chime in. But it's come up in a couple of different, probably I would say every year we sort of stop to consider it. It came up also in the high school scheduling meeting. It came up in the later start committee meeting. Sort of dabbling with what works best. Is it the 1 hour in terms of the professional development that's happening? Some districts do half days, some do fewer but full days. Some do the hour at the end of the day. And so essentially we determined that the best time to change it, if we ever wanted to, would be when the later start committee makes a determination of what the start and the end of the school day would be, and that's going to reconvene next year. And so I'm assuming it will come up more then. One thing I know for sure that's sort of been reiterated every time we discuss it is how important the time is and how it's very well used, it's very well received by teachers. And I would say when we sort of do get into more of the nitty gritty, the rub with how to structure that time is it's in some ways a lot more effective to do it on a weekly basis and have more time versus projects that can just be done in a half day or a day are a lot more, it's just not as effective. It's kind of more of a one-off versus something that you can do in a process and give people an assignment and then think about it or put something into practice and then come back to it. And so it really would change. It's not just about, and I'm speaking totally from the teacher side, not from the parent side. I think either way, as the parent of a 4-year-old, it's hard to get coverage for an hour at the beginning or the end of the day, or for a half day or for a whole day. But it really changes how we would define the work we're able to do, depending on how the time is structured.
Okay. Thank you. So the late start committee is going to start during the next school year?
Yeah, so we put that on a pause for this year, just because
everything else.
Not knowing what the structure of school will be like next year, and we currently, I was actually, when Mr. Beaton was talking, I was going back to my notes of when, as an administrative team, we started planning for the next school year already, and it was actually in February when we already started playing out 4 different models of what school could potentially look like. And between that having a new bus contract and not even knowing the relationship we would have to create with that bus company. When Lou and I discussed, we just didn't feel like it would be wise to throw yet another,
another variable.
yeah, another variable to figure out and consider. So it's absolutely gonna start up again in September, right where we left off. It's just, it didn't seem like wise to do that now.
And we were making good headway. It's not that
Yes.
we're just when everything else
Mhm.
shut down, we just, it stopped. So if we do that, I think but to the point, and parents have raised this every year, I think part of that discussion with Late Start would have to be what resources exist or how can we help bring about other resources for those parents for that time period. There has to be something we can do to address that. We can't act like, well, whatever it is, you're just gonna have to deal with it.
Our last meeting was February before we all sort of left last year. And the meeting that I was starting to plan to reach out to people was actually the childcare group. That was the next one. So we had done a busing meeting. We had then done an athletics meeting. So we were trying to bring in a group from each of our sort of quote unquote problem areas of other constituents we wouldn't want to negatively impact based on what we were trying to accomplish. And so childcare was actually the next group we were going to invite. So that's where we'll start up in the fall.
Wonderful.
So that will address, that will address that issue or start to address that issue.
Yeah.
So those are all the things that were coming up because a lot of it was, well, if we did later start for the older kids, then does that mean earlier for the younger kids? And so all of that, all those questions got raised. So we'll be addressing it.
And would we expect to have a decision by the end of the school year, one way or another on this? Is
that would be the hope.
Yeah,
It's a hope.
I think that's that's reasonable. Hopefully you're
End of next school year.
But but I think.
And now we have an
21,
item-
22.
Now we have an item to replace the building project.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kate.
We have to approve this?
We have to approve it. Any other questions? No, so do I have a motion to approve the calendar?
Is it appropriate to make a motion to approve the calendar at this point in time? I so move.
Okay. Bill? Motion by Bill, second by Jamie. All in favor of the calendar? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Katie. Okay, so item 11.6, spring sports update and the transportation modification for athletes. You had a consent form that was included as part of your board packet. This is also an action item, Patrick?
Yeah, and Nate's on, he can give you a quick overview of how spring sports are going, and then the form that we put in there, a handful of other districts are using this as well, or something similar to this. And again, it's just to try to help a little bit with, in case we get into a bind. It's not something we're going to encourage every trip, but if we, some of our, track is a big group, and some other ones are bigger, so that if parents are willing to try, take their child to a game and bring them home, it only helps with the social distancing that has to happen on the buses. So that's why that's there. But at first, Nate, are you out there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Want to give us an update?
Yeah, the spring officially started today. We were on pause for a little bit, as we all know, due to the school shutdown. We shut down athletics as well through vacation week. For playing contests, but we did play some contests today. We started baseball and softball, and tennis started their seasons today. So we're off to a good start. Nothing, negative to really report. The weather's been okay. It's been somewhat cooperative, but overall we're off to a good start. Lacrosse, they play tomorrow for the boys, and our girls play on Thursday. So everybody's starting this week. I think people are just excited to get back out there. It was great seeing kids playing today. We had a couple of wins across the board today, which certainly felt good. As far as distancing and masking and whatnot of our spectators, at the JV softball game today, everybody looked great. We actually had a really nice turnout for JV softball game, which I thought was really nice. A lot of parents from Brunswick came to support those kids as well. People seem to be masked, distanced, following all guidelines and protocols put in place. So So no issues there. And then same with tennis, a little bit smaller crowd. We played Yarmouth at home for the girls in tennis today, and no issues, nothing to report as far as being negative or anything that I saw like that. Any questions about spring season so far? I know it just got started, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of Nate? Yep, Jeff.
Hi, Nate, it's Jennifer. Could you just remind me if, because we've had a couple of schools go yellow recently, back from green to yellow. So if a school that we're playing goes to yellow, how does that impact the schedule?
The state doesn't necessarily follow that anymore in terms of extracurriculars, so that's a local decision now. So if we were to go yellow, or if another school were to go yellow, it'd be up to us to decide what we wanted to do, or for that other school district to decide what they want to do.
And how would that decision be made? Would that just be your call or Patrick's call, or?
Our call, yeah. So I would talk with Patrick, certainly. Ultimately be his call as a superintendent, but we would have that discussion.
I think we involve our nurses and talk to Hannah. I would say right now that given what we've been through for the last couple of weeks, we wouldn't. That would be my recommendation, and that I think we could easily find someone closer by that's in a green county to take that place. Even the outbreak status, again, outbreak status is different than being in the yellow.
Right.
But, like I said to Nate before break, is, because we were an outbreak status school, which is a lot more now online, but that, out of courtesy, we need to call those communities that we're playing and make sure that they're comfortable, playing us. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, okay. And the community spread that we're seeing with the increased outbreak, community spread, not school-based spread, but community-based spread, is that, do we call it school-based spread if we have communities gathering more and then we have greater, exposure? And is that considered a school-based if it's at a school outdoor sports fan thing? Okay, so the way they track these things, they can tell that none of these COVID issues are coming, or none of the COVID responses were from any participation with sports, right?
When we speak to the nurses about school-based, it's both what's happening in the building and what's happening on our sports teams.
Okay.
We have no control over the audience of whatever these events are, because those aren't our people that we're talking to about their medical issues per se. But when the nurses are investigating, it could be someone on a sports team, it could be someone in our building, but we consider it to be school-related spread if it's within our sports community or within our building community.
Okay.
Anything related to school things happening, essentially.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Nate, do you want to add anything to that waiver form?
I do. I just want to say that this is something that several other districts are doing. Close by, SAD 75 is doing it. So basically, our current transportation policy for extracurriculars it requires students to travel to away events with team transportation or school transportation, but there's some flexibility in allowing students to leave that event with a parent or a guardian. And the protocol right now is that if that does happen, parents just send me an email saying I'm taking so-and-so with me from X event. This waiver, I think, would just help alleviate some transportation issues. As Patrick had mentioned, the track team, specifically the track team, we have over 55 kids on the team this year, which is great. Numbers are up in that program. But with the current restrictions on transportation and busing, that would put us at over 2 school buses, which, we just don't really have the means for that kind of travel. So offering this is a solution to that issue where students could travel to an away event with a parent and then also leave that away event with a parent. I think would just be beneficial for that transportation issue that it's not going to be every event. We were able to travel to Brunswick today, okay, for baseball and softball, but some of those bigger trips with track and some of the bigger days where transportation might not really be available, I think this could certainly help.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Any questions for Nate? Go ahead, sorry.
Hi Nate, it's Laura, obviously.
Laura.
The obvious question on the consent form is that if a bus leaves at 1 in the afternoon or earlier, the obvious question is for students who drive themselves and have their own cars, do we really think a parent of a student with their own vehicle is going to leave work to transport them? I know that's what we're hoping, but how do we deal with the obvious that, or are we going to try to monitor that students are driving their own cars potentially with other students? What's your response to that, I guess?
That's a great question. So what we don't want is students driving themselves or students driving with other students. This is just a parent legal guardian form. So we certainly don't want to go into the weeds with students driving themselves. And to answer your question about early release, luckily we don't have too many of those. I know track might have one a little bit earlier release, but a lot of our transportation is a little bit later in the day, 3 o'clock, 2:30, somewhere around there, even later than that at times. So this isn't for everybody. This is just for, we're hoping, we want students to travel on the bus because I think that's a valuable experience when you can be with your team on a bus to and from an event. But in those rare instances where, we're just over capacity with transportation or whatnot, I think this could help with that. So I'm not sure that I answered your question, but that's the hope.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Any other questions? If not, we need a motion.
I just want a clarification on that. So can you clarify that the rules as they stand now, we do not allow students to drive themselves to sporting events?
Correct.
Okay. So this does not deviate from that policy? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion to
Move approval, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion by Bill, second by Jamie. And again, we're voting on the consent release form. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
11.7, we have the transportation contract, and this is an action item, Patrick.
Yeah, so we, I think most people know Bath Bus, did not bid on the contract this year. It's, they're going in a different direction, and we knew that up front. So, we did get 2 bids, and one was from First Student, and the other one was from Northeast. And so I would just like to thank both companies for bidding on this. They both were a pleasure to work with. We asked them follow-up questions. We checked references on both companies. And the apparent low bidder, or the low bidder, is First Student. And I sent the board the information on the actual numbers, but it was significant as far as the cost, which is one component. I realized that I think it was 15 years ago now, maybe, that there was a poor experience in the district with the company First Student, and it did not last long. And then Bath Bus came along and kind of took it back over. And so I know people remember that. I know some of our drivers will remember that. I know that parents will remember that because the routes weren't well done. They didn't know the routes. But again, that was quite a bit of time ago. And we were very upfront with First Student, even before they bid, when they just called to ask questions. And their response to us is, we're not the same company we were back then. The 2 people we've been dealing with, that we will be dealing with, are weren't there back then. I did call numerous school districts that work with First Student right now and got nothing but positive responses from them about how efficient, effective, how flexible they are, and been very happy with them. So, it's ideally it's not a year that we want to be moving into a brand new bus contract with transportation contract, but my recommendation would be to go with First Student, and our plan is to, as early as maybe the end of this week, first of next week, is to have the two gentlemen come down and meet with our bus drivers, then meet with our administrators and key people that, to get this process rolling. And if you approve this tonight, then basically Deb and I would meet with those two gentlemen to kind of finalize the contract.
How the first student is statewide. I mean, they have far-ranging contracts.
Yeah,
with many other districts.
Yeah, I mean, they're in Maine, their office is based out of Augusta. They still have to work out the details of, where would they keep their buses down here, where would their kind of office be, rent. But they're,
I guess that's my point. They will have a local presence to manage.
Yes, and the hope is that, our drivers are the strength of our program, and their goal and their hope is to employ those drivers. And so that's what we want to see. So hopefully as parents, you're going to see a different name on the side of the bus, but that we expect the service to be the same. I guess that's all, the best way to put it. And so they have a lot of resources. They're in a lot of districts in New Hampshire. And again, I don't know about other states in New England, but.
Okay.
So that, again, the amount that first student in the contract is in next year's proposed budget.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Questions?
I have one.
Yep.
Patrick, first of all, I appreciate the research of the other schools. So that was a good move. There's a significant just a significant price difference between first student and Northeast on the athletics. So did you flush that out at all on why? I mean, it's great that first student bid lower on athletics, but it's significantly lower and also doesn't seem to have a wait time. And maybe I'm not looking at the contract, I'm just looking at a summary.
Mm-hmm.
So could you just address why you think they're so grossly competitive? Do you think Northeast just didn't want to do athletics?
We did ask some follow-up questions. I don't have that specific answer, with me tonight, but again, the biggest difference is, when you talk about vans, they both have wait time for that.
Yeah.
And so, but for athletics, I don't think there was anything in there about, wait time for either one. But for vans, the big difference is that the gas is supplied by Northeast,
right.
Which again, they gave an estimated savings of, $50,000 to $60,000. But in the big picture of things, the overall bid to and from school and for athletics and field trips was, again, the low bidder was first student. So I don't know, Laura, about the big difference between the athletic transportation.
Yeah, the base price is $39,000
versus 162.
Versus 162. So.
But again, both companies were a pleasure to work with. Answered our questions, we answered their questions, and they were very thorough in their research of contacting that bus. And I would say, it's been a pleasure working with that bus. Suzanne, Billy, everybody that's works for that bus. It's been a pleasure. We certainly will miss working with it.
Questions, Jim?
How long is this contract for?
This would be for 3 years.
Is that typical?
I think so.
Okay.
Both of them came in with that approach.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to share the concern that I have because I remember having an elementary student at that time of that bus. And so I guess I just wanted to express the concern, and I'm glad that you addressed it. And hopefully we won't have to face that again, but it wasn't a fun thing for families or students to go through.
But it sounds, the big difference, it sounds like, is they want to hire a lot of the known. So the buses may be different, but the drivers are the drivers who know the route. So I think because I remember that too. It was a crazy couple of weeks.
They're well aware, and for example, with the middle school, the 8th grade started today, we were a little concerned about capacity on the buses, and it worked out fine. But we had reached out to first students and just said, and they felt the same way. This might be, if we needed them, this might be a nice way to, a small introduction to the district in a way that, obviously they get paid for it and compensated, but to, help the district in need, in a need before they officially start, this school year. But yeah, definitely we have some local people that are involved in doing the routes right now that have already, mentioned to us that they're happy to, work with them. But that is going to be, I guess it's better to just know it up front and have it on our radar screen than having a different company that doesn't maybe take it as seriously.
Sure.
So to speak. So, but I appreciate the comment.
Any other comments?
I just hope that they have a deep well of bus drivers that they can train and be available, because I just watch the news and it seems like bus drivers, just like custodians, they're shutting our schools down as much as all other issues, not that either one of those are doing it intentionally at all. It's just the lack of them and then the health issues. So I hope First Student has a way of keeping good qualified employees.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the transportation contract. I have a motion from Bill, second from Lou. Any further discussion, comments? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have two back-to-back discussion items here. 11.8, we have the update on middle school in-person learning. I assume two principals are on. Patrick, do you want to?
Yeah, we just thought it'd be good to have a quick update today, because I think since the last time we met, we brought back 6th, 7th, and then today is hard to kind of describe. Well, they'll talk about first day way. But Jason, do you want to go first and just talk about, again, reminder, I think all of you know this, but just a reminder about the learning hub approach at Woolwich for 6, 7, and 8, and then the, I guess you'd say, traditional approach of in-person learning at BMS. So Jason, you all set?
Yeah, sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it was, I just want to say it was a very exciting day at Woolwich, is where I'd want to start off. For the first time in over a year, we had all of our pre-K through 8th grade students in the building with us today. So it was very exciting, and it seemed like a long time coming. As Pat alluded to, and as I've spoken before at the meetings, we have a slightly modified approach to getting all of our kids back because of the structure of our school in the K-8 setting and the impact it would have had on everyone. So we have what we've termed a hub model. It basically means we're running the hybrid days, but we're doing everything in school so that they're maintaining their academic relationships with their teachers for in-person learning. And then we've been able to hire staff to work as ed techs in a kind of supervisory position. So we have for those days when they're in as their hub day, we're calling it. So it would be traditionally in the past their at home day, but they're in the building with us. As Pat mentioned, on Monday, April 14th, we started that with our 6th and 7th grade students. So we have 2 hub teachers that are working with 6th grade students, or supervising those 2 ed techs, Linda Stiles and Michelle Baker. And then we have another one, Bonnie McKay, who is working with our 7th grade group. Today we started with our 8th graders and welcomed them back as well. So we have Sam Boyd working with one of those groups, and then Hope Falkingham will eventually, but she is graduating from UMF this weekend. So we're covering that this week until she can join us next week, but she'll be responsible for that group next week. For those of you who know my building well, we have utilized, I think, every space except for one observation room that's next to the pre-K classroom. We have one of the 6th grade groups. I moved special ed into a slightly smaller space on the 3rd floor. So one of our 6th grade groups is working there. When Mr. Lucas left to help us get our K-5 students back and had moved down, his room became vacant. And then we were using that as a music room in terms of where our music teacher housed her supplies and equipment as she loaded up her cart and went to classrooms. So I moved her to a different conference room in the building so that we could have that classroom back for the other 6th grade group. The 3rd floor forum is where our 7th grade group is working out of on their hub days. To bring back the 8th grade today, we had to take, Laura Devon adjusted the use of her space in the art room. So we have half of that room is housing one of our 8th grade groups. The interventions that were taking place there have been moved over to the forum on the first floor. And then the DOPE conference room, which is at the end of the administrative wing, if you've been in the building, is where we're housing our other 8th grade group. So that, as I said, kind of summarizes where we've been able to put everyone. I want to reassure everyone that, you know, within all of those spaces, we have these required safety distances, so we're all safe. And, you know, it just became moving smaller groups to accommodate the larger groups. But to this point, you know, we've been able to make it work with that. On the days that, on the days, I'll call them the hub days. So the students are in with us. They begin the morning. They have a morning meeting upon their arrival into the room. They just can reconnect with that teacher, kind of get a feel for the day. Then as where they work their way through the day, we have, you know, structured work sessions where they are accessing their bright space, completing the assignments that are presented to them there by their teachers, but have the support of the adult in the room to help them answer questions or help facilitate communications with teachers if needed, or at least a heads up to them the next day or overnight that, you know, Johnny worked on this, but he was struggling. So they're getting some more, you know, feedback that way. We built them in a lunch period within the gym. So we have them spaced out appropriately in the gym. That was added on at the end. So that did require some support to our kitchen staff, which Mr. Harkins was able to make work. So they come in, they have lunch, then they have recess. In between those work sessions, they take motor breaks and go outside. On the nice days, they're able to get outside, so the hub teacher will take them out, so they're getting some fresh air and exercise there and getting a break and an opportunity to socialize. And then towards the end of the day, kind of within that session, we have a built-in enrichment session, which will take on many different looks as we make our way through this process. For example, last week we had a couple of STEAM activities built in where, you know, they were using toothpicks and mini marshmallows to see who could build the largest tower, freestanding tower. And then we're kind of processing that from that STEAM perspective. So I think, you know, it's been wonderful to have kids back. The middle school students are never going to tell you this, but I think they've appreciated it. You can tell by the look in their eyes and their, you know, just as they're conducting themselves. We've had good attendance through the first week before. Again, only one day with the 8th graders, but we've had a good attendance. And, you know, overall, I think the program's going to grow a bit as we go. One thing that, you know, will naturally happen is our in-person teachers are starting to create some projects that can continue on over into that other day now that they're seeing how this will work with having the students in the building. You know, I think we've talked a lot about it, and a lot of discussion around the school board has been, you know, about having them back and addressing some of the academic concerns, but equally of importance is the social emotional component. And I think, you know, I think we're going to be able to strike that balance pretty well for the last part of the school year here. So that's kind of where we're at, and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Any questions of Jason?
Well, if no one else does, yeah. Hi, Jason, it's Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
So, hi, one of the concerns I remember hearing was that they didn't want these updates to be study halls.
Correct.
Looks like by your description, there's a lot of things going on that are not just sit and study, you know, do the work that they could do as easily as home, you know, at home.
Correct.
But so they've been in this process for 2 days, right?
Well,
For the 6th graders?
Technically for the hub part of it, yeah. One group had 3 days, but yes, one group was 2 and one was 3. Yep.
Okay. So how would you characterize the percentage of time these kids are in these during the day that they're not kind of in study hall mode compared to the sit and work kind of mode?
Well, I guess the clearest way I could probably answer it, Jen, is, you know, the way our schedule is kind of set up, we have three work sessions that are each 45 minutes. And I guess that would be the time when students are kind of independently logging into their Brightspace, seeing the assignments that they have to complete for that day and working on those. So, you know, I mean, again, that's supported, but that would be the time. Beyond that, any other time they have is either involved in kind of a movement break or an enrichment activity that is kind of new. Either it's targeted towards building that social emotional connections again, and or some enrichment type of learning opportunities, such as the toothpicks and marshmallows is one example that we were able to do the week before. So, you know, over the course of the day, I guess you got an hour and a half, 2 hours and 15 minutes. That would be those work sessions for the remote learning work. And then the rest of that time, the other 2.5 to 3 hours is built more towards enrichment and social interaction. I guess I would say it that way. You know, and lunch and recesses in there as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
That sounds like a good mix. So, any questions?
Quick one, because I know we still have something important to talk about. Mr. Libby's, Lorna, hi.
Hi, Lorna. There
is, right now, remind me, there's no, in the Learning Hub days, there's no synchronous learning at this time?
At this current moment, no. I think that is a possibility. You know, we're exploring that. I think it was a matter of trying to get everybody in the building safely, just seeing how those dynamics played out and those logistics, and made sure we could do all of that, you know, without putting additional work towards, you know, teachers about trying to set that all up. But as I alluded to, just having them in the building for a week, teachers were already starting to think along those lines of how they could utilize that other time that they're in the building. So I think that's a possibility that we're going to try to grow to. Would it be a mandate for every class? Probably not at this point, but it would be something we'll start to work towards. And of course, depending on the situation, if we're able to do that, that'll give us a lot more flexibility to next year's planning as well, as we start to think about different scenarios for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jason.
You're welcome.
Is Brandon on? Brandon?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. So quick update from BMS. Obviously, I don't have quite as much to share as Jason did. Our 6th and 7th grade have been back for a couple of weeks. I do know that after 2 weeks of full in-person learning, both the students and staff were badly in need of that April break. So that came at the right time. First day back for 8th grade today, it went really well. As Jason also said, the kids, even though they might not admit to it, most of them are pretty excited to be back every day. I think kids have been looking forward to this. I know families have been looking forward to it, as have staff. So today went really well. Patrick noted earlier that the transportation piece worked out fine. Buses were not overcrowded at all. It looks like that's going to work out just great. And at this point, for us, it's, you know, as normal as it can be in a COVID year. We have the masks and the social distancing, but otherwise it's 5 days a week for in-person. Kids are all in classes, and it's instruction 5 days a week. And other than that, I don't have much more to share. Things have gone very well so far, and I anticipate and hope that they will continue to do so. But I would be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Any questions from Brandon? No? No? Great. Thank you very much, Brandon.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to ask for a motion to extend our meeting beyond 8 so we don't interrupt the Morse discussion. So do I have a motion to continue our meeting
I'll make that
beyond
motion.
8? I have a motion by Lorna, second by Jennifer. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, 11.9. Patrick, this is discussion of Morse increasing to in-person. So we have Patrick and Eric out there.
Yeah, so Eric provided some backup information to the board, explaining the different options that he's looked at and that we've looked at together. So I'll turn this over to Eric, at this point, and he can kind of go through those with you and then open it up for kind of a discussion. We didn't put this as an action item because we weren't sure where we were going. But again, it's similar to, we've made some adjustments with Bath Tech before and with, other ones to increase some in-person learning. But Eric, you out there?
I am. Can you hear me all right?
Yep. Go ahead.
Great. I'd like to start just by kind of going through the process of exploring how to get more students back in to Morris at the 9 to 12 level. We did start with a hub, distance learning hub model for students who are on their off days. And I think you're all aware that I advertised for that for quite some time and didn't find the applicants to do that. So we've had to change gears a bit and go back to the drawing board and look at, explore all possibilities. I think, you know, the ideal would be to get the most amount of students back. And you know, so we looked at, well, what would it take to bring 9 to 12 back to 4 days a week or 5 days a week of in-person instruction, what have you. I think I laid out in the supplementary material that it is really problematic to do that. We have ranging from, depending on the period of the day, ranging from around 20 to almost 30 classes that won't fit with the 3 foot spacing. Lunch would be even further problematic for those times. Busing would also, now that K to 8 is back, busing would not be possible. There obviously are some huge pros to that. Moving away from the hybrid model, that would be the maximum amount of in-person instruction. From there, we looked at couple different versions, one focusing just on one class, looking at what would make the most amount of educational sense would be grades 9, to bring that back to a 4-day-a-week program. There are some implications with that that are problematic as well. The numbers aren't quite as daunting. We range from anywhere from 4 to 9 classes that don't fit in their classrooms. So you know, that is something that there's a possibility of using auditorium spaces, gyms, so on and so forth, to move students around. A significant implication to that is that any class that has a 9th grader in it, and we don't have just 9th grade classes at the high school level. You know, we have some that are largely 9th graders, but 9th graders take a variety of different classes. So any class that had that would have to go to a fully synchronous model, which would have implications across the whole school. So you'd have teachers teaching in an asynchronous model, which most are now, a synchronous model, and then also we have the fully distanced students. And again, busing was an issue, and lunches would be an issue, particularly busing in well, Woolwich, Phippsburg, and Bath. That could probably work. Other communities, it would not. So there's a third option that I'd like to throw out, and this is the option that I kind of I like to throw my support behind, and that's offering an extended school day program. So basically what that is it would go from after dismissal, just after dismissal, say around 1:30 to 3:30. It could be open to students who were in school that day, or students who have who are on their distance learning day could come in the afternoon to do their work. It would be a 4-day-a-week program, and we could offer some ancillary programs or services such as social work, you know, obviously food and so on. Again, transportation is still a barrier here with this. We'd have to, and I've been talking with Bath Bus. We may need to look elsewhere to try to increase that service, to have transportation. What I think is positive about this is that it does open a door for students and families who really do need this, and are struggling to get that distance learning work done, no matter what their grade is, whether they're in 9th grade or an upperclassman. And it we can do that also without having really significant changes across all of the classes and all of the students. So that's where I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions around this, but that is a program that I'd like to kind of move forward with, trying to implement for the rest of the school year. In doing so, I would, this would be the program that we would go forward with rather than one of the other ones that I've mentioned before. The staff overall, we've discussed this in the leadership group. It's been brought back to departments and then brought back again. This is the most supported by them. And I do have somebody from each department who would be there on those days to help students. So, a math teacher would be there, an English, social studies, and so on, of the 4 cores, as well as 2 days a week. I could staff it with social workers. In the other 2 days, I would be able to have sort of some other support staff, but non-social work support staff. So with that, that kind of background on it, I'd like to open it up to discussion of the board. So.
Okay, thanks, Eric. As far as option 3 goes, this would be a voluntary thing, right? I mean, students would, as you said, would have the opportunity to participate.
Yes, yeah, this would be a voluntary opportunity.
Okay, questions for Eric? Yeah, Lorna?
Hi, Mr. Barney.
Hi, Lorna.
I do have some questions, and I just want to say up front, thank you so much for putting this together for us. And also, the questions that I ask, I just want to say to you and also to the board that if I ask questions that seem hard, it's not that I want to create any discord with you or the board or anything. I just feel like it's a really good chance since we're all together, and that's really rare. And it's rare, especially to have time with you. It's just have a lot of questions, and hopefully we can flush through them.
Understood.
For this year, and also a few comments for next year. But the first question I have on this third option is the 1:30 to 3:30 time. Right off the bat, that sort of excludes kids on some level who do athletics. Would that be right?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. That 1:30 to 3:30, they wouldn't be there, at least they wouldn't be able to do the full time. Now, possibly they could come in, it depends on when the practice is. No practices don't start, and I don't know if Nate's on this call. I don't know when the earliest one is, but it is after, I think, 2:15. So there would be a period of time when they could duck in, but that would minimize that amount of time. I would say that if a student is really struggling and needing, academically and wanting that support, maybe they could speak with their coach and find a day when they could work here on the extended school day program rather than going to their practice on that day.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, you mentioned transportation. And what I can see is, first of all, I understand this is the best thing you can do for this year. I mean, I do, reading everything you presented to us, I understand this is for this year, what you've come up with. But also, if you're in Pittsburgh or West Bath or Rouseck, and you don't have a car and your parents are home working, are not home because they're working, again, even you really don't have any options at this point.
No, that's where that's with Bath Bus. We wouldn't be able to offer that from Bath Bus, but Patrick and I are looking into potentially other transportation services for this program particularly.
Okay. And then you had, obviously there's the challenges of almost 600 kids being in school at the same time. I obviously, you don't anticipate 600 kids participating in the 1:30 to 3:30 option, but how do you, if we're so worried about our numbers and contact tracing, would you be asking for some kind of commitment at least one week by week, or is this a moving target day by day?
Yeah, initially that's a great question, and I've gone back and forth with myself and others on this and what level of commitment, because to a certain degree, when you take away that level of commitment, you open up opportunity for students who, hey, you're not quite getting this. Can you stay after on the extended school day program, that sort of thing, which we've gotten to the point where we can with our Wednesday program, and it's been successful because of that level of freedom. But I think initially we will need to ask for a commitment. And, if this looks like the direction we're going to go, then really tomorrow I need to push out to families. What level of interest do you have in this? And it won't be I'm not that you say yes or no now and that's it, but whether we do a couple of weeks of you sign up for that week, X days on that week, and it might be that somebody would just choose to stay on their in-person days, or the opposite, that they would want to come just for their distance days. And so we could develop a roster and have a plan that we could feel comfortable with, and then start to get a little bit looser in terms of allowing people to come once we gauge the level of interest. Because that could be a reality. If you open up the doors, if you build it, they will come potentially. I would say that we have a little bit of a, we have a trial, I guess you'd say, in a way, with our Wednesday programs, and our numbers. I can almost predict the numbers from 1 week to the next based on where we are in the term, and so on. And then by that Monday, we ask for a commitment for that day. We wouldn't be running the same level of commitment, and sign up by teachers and the whole program that we do there, because that would just be too cumbersome to run 4 days a week where we're doing that one day a week. But we would have a program to initially get out of the gates with, find that level, and then we could probably be a little bit more fluid from there.
Okay. And then I appreciated you breaking down by period how the amount of classrooms that have spatial issues. How many, just generally, how many classes go on during a day, or average per period? Like 26 have spatial issues, but what total classes are going on at that time?
Oh, that's a great question. And I honestly, I would be making it up if I gave you it off the hip. And that would be variable per period. I know that we have less, I believe, the least or fourth period.
Yeah.
But boy, I could get you that number though, Lorna.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In light of the discussion we had earlier this evening, I need to leave the meeting at this point in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, good job.
Thank you, Bill.
You saved. So those were my questions on the plan, the third option. And then for my colleagues on the board, and just kind of circling back to next year, and I know that's not what we're discussing at this moment, but I just watched a full interview of Commissioner Macon. She was interviewed by News Center 6 last week, and she was asked point blank by a reporter a lot of questions. And one was, what do you see for next year? And she was pretty clear that they don't currently, they being the DOE, the state, and her medical experts, have any data that they have faith in that the distancing is going to be relaxed in the near future. So I think it's safe to say that we need to forge on as if they're in place. And I would agree that the constituents we've heard from, especially at the high school level, have consistently asked for leadership, and it doesn't mean that there hasn't been any. But I do think I know I've been saying, we're just following the state guidelines. We're kind of stuck because we're following the state guidelines. And we can't overturn the state guidelines unilaterally, of course. But I would very much like to, within the next few meetings between now and June, show the public that I know we're saying we want to go back 100%, but what does that look like? I mean, we have a list of all the hurdles, and if transportation is non-existent, then we have some hard work to do on transportation. Staffing, we know the labor market isn't changing in 4 months. So I'm just throwing that out there on what is going through my mind and what I've been hearing from constituents who aren't just calling me to yell at me, but have done their own homework and are watching the news and watching other districts open. And so I don't think anything is going to be overturned all that quick from the state. I'd love to be proven wrong. But as far as this plan for the remainder of the year, and Mr. Barney, I was also going to ask, I counted on the school calendar. It looks like the game days for in-person learning are 12 if we go back 100%.
It would be somewhere around there. I think it was a little bit more than that, actually. Maybe.
I just meant the game days, but I think we have 30 something in-person days. I mean, school days left.
I thought I counted 13 or 14, but I could be off on that.
You're probably right. So anyway, I'm just saying that for these last few months or weeks, 6 weeks, we finished strong, and we offer what we can. But next year, I don't personally want the messaging to be, we're just going to see what the state does. So
that's why we're currently already working on, social distancing versus no social distancing. So we have 2 plans, and we are already having conversations with the first student as much as we can before we even sign a contract to talk to them about bus runs, at the middle school level. Do they need, in elementary, do we still need 2 bus runs? How the big thing at the high school is asynchronous versus synchronous, for next year, and then how we could use other spaces at the high school, and again, working out that transportation issue. So, it's our goal, our aim to have 100% of the kids back 100% of the time.
And I respect that goal, and I think all I'm saying is that, and again, this goes back to just having the conversation that we have the goal, but it'll be exciting to see the plan. And then you just reminded me of one more. Is synchronous learning, anyone can chime in on this, is that optional by teacher right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we built our model for this year, we built ultimately an asynchronous model using Brightspace on the day. So a teacher is developing 3 at-home or distance classes and 2 in-person classes for each cohort of kids. However, some teachers did come to me and say, my class really is well suited to do an original lesson every day and have students tune in on a synchronous model, and so we allowed that, opened that option, and it does work well for some teachers for the way they teach and so on. So I think right now we have I think we have 5 teachers right now who are doing that or some form of that at the school. And just, well, I'll let you respond to that, but I do have another comment about your earlier comment, Lorna.
I was just going to say, I had an opportunity, I think I shared with you, I heard one of those synchronous classes, and I was overhearing it when I was working from home, and it was hard for me to pay attention to work because it was so engaging listening to the teacher teach my student. And so the other thing I was just going to say on that is that I'm not suggesting that teachers have to have 6 different or 3 different models next year to teach synchronous, hybrid, this, that. Like, you know, I think hopefully by then we can narrow it down to one versus the other, but if we have the technology and the money for the technology, an expansion of that would seem to be beneficial.
That's something that's already on the list that we're considering, and we've actually already the Polycom bars that are the most helpful for that. We've purchased them in anticipation that we might need to have everybody using them, or a much greater number of people using. Great.
And just following up to that, as well as Mr. Beaton's, comments at the beginning of the meeting today, if I was talking about next year and putting a proposal together with numbers for you for next year, it would be very different. And the first question to pop into mind, well, why is that? You have the same school, but starting a new school year with what we know now, with the changes that have occurred, we could throw all the cards back on the table and see where our priorities lie now. And that could be anything from, the synchronous model, which you already mentioned. It could be, obviously we have a priority here to bring students back and put the hybrid model behind us. I think most people feel that way. So, whether that's a further manipulation of our schedule and the way we're using, what we're teaching, the variety of what we can teach, and if we have to hone down on what's really needs to be taught. And the other thing is we don't, although I know the labor market's not going to change significantly, but we're 4 months out here, and we're in a hiring process for a couple of positions that you discussed earlier. And it might be that we could be in a position where we could add key elements to our staff to do that. So I guess overall, I had a great conversation with Mr. Beaton, earlier this month. I think, I just would push back on that. We are only thinking that I do hope that the 3 foot distance goes behind us, but if not, then we are discussing many different options.
Thank you for all your hard work in presenting this to us, and thanks to the staff for everything.
No, thank you.
Our goal is by, June, for our sake, as well as family's sake, to, lay out those plans so that people will know ahead of time.
Okay.
And Patrick, I know she's talking about what she's seen on the news, but when you're talking, is the state telling you anything about at what point they're looking at next year, or when they would come up with some, what are they telling the schools?
I mean, we've reached out a couple times, and they said, from us, we were specifically asking for social distance, and they just said there wasn't much direction at this point on that. That's about all I can say. Right
So we'll have to see in another month, because I guess we'll have to, that may be some action that the board is willing to take to, we want to send a message ourselves. And I think we're going to have to, because as the first individual who called in, and she's right, you're opening up the whole state, and then you're going to tell us you can't do this at but you can't send the kids back. That's ludicrous. So I just like to know what their process is, if they're saying, again, even if they're saying, well, we don't know yet, but what process, you're obviously going through a process, and I'm glad this is coming out so the public sees you're going through, we got 4 plans, we're, honing everything so we're prepared for a diverse array of possibilities. But the state's going to have to own up to what process they're going through, because, it's not, I don't know how they can do one thing at DOE and the rest of the state can say, oh yeah, we're going to just let this happen. So, I think as a board, we just have to be ready. We're going to have to say something. We're going to have to do something if by June, the state has it, still is vague. So, but thank you, Eric, for all this hard work, and thanks to the board.
Any other questions for Eric? Yeah.
Hi, Eric, it's Jennifer. Just a question about just logistics here, because I haven't been in the high school for quite a while and how things operate. So according to this plan 3, at 1:30, there could be a lot more students coming into the buildings. And I'm kind of like, my experience is in the lower grades, and I kind of think how we're going to keep track of all these kids. And how do we know who's in our building? And how do we know if there's a reason that we need to get everybody out, how can we get them out? I know it's kind of a silly thing, but, so my question is like, would there be an attendance process where everybody would have to sign in at 1:30? And then you would kind of know who's actually in your building?
Yes, and this is something we've honed over the with the Wednesday program, and you know, to be honest, we're accustomed in schools, right, to have the kids. The bell rings, we get them in, we take attendance, and then we, you know, call, like we're responsible for those students, right? And so this would extend that a little bit. So we would have, they'd come in and they'd come to a central place like we do on Wednesdays. They check in, and then from there, it's, you know, on our Wednesday program, it's they have a home base that they go to. Once they're checked into their home base, and then they go to the teacher that they're signed up to see during that block of time. And we provide them a schedule in their email when they come in, because we've been out a couple of days. This would be different, obviously. As I said, we can't do that 4 days a week. So we'd ask for some level of commitment, so we'd know that they're coming. And when they come in, we would have them in, you know, one of those 4 to 5 locations, so that we could track where they are. One thing that's a little bit, you know, we unless a student qualifies for open, normally once they're here till the end of the school day on a regular school day. And this could be a little bit different, where they could, you know, potentially maybe they need to come for an hour, maybe they have practice or whatnot. So we'd have to have a check out policy for that, which is, you know, again, from a school administrator standpoint, like that doesn't feel good, but that's I think what we're going to have to do. We're going to have that level of flexibility in order to, you know, we've been successful on it on Wednesdays, and we're going to have to do that.
Can I ask that question? If you when you were talking about schedules, like before, you mentioned something about, you know, as you're looking at different plans, it wouldn't affect it for the rest of this year, but going into next year, does that mean you still, even though the kids obviously are signing up for next year, what classes will be taking, is it still possible you may have to revert back to how you did it this year with this classes, or are you not too concerned about that?
That's certainly a possibility that we'd consider. I don't want to. I want to go forward with the schedule that the staff and you know, the scheduling committee chose. Excuse me, but depending on what we look at, you know, I would certainly not take that card off on the table right now at this point. I think it could be debated.
Thanks.
Okay, I think, are we comfortable with Eric's assessment of options 1 and 2, that they're not practical at this point for Morse? And looking at option 3, it's just a question of what Eric needs to move forward, because there are still some unanswered questions here. Transportation maybe being the biggest. He's touched on some kind of granular issues of how you control the kids in the building, et cetera. So he's got some work to do if we think that this is the track that he should continue on. I think in response to, you know, your comment and the parents' comments, you know, Lauren, this has been an incremental process. You know, we haven't come to a point where you just say, well, we're ready to go full time. But we have tried to continue that movement toward full time, you know, throughout the year, and hopefully this is another, not a full step, but another step towards that. I don't know, do we
No,
We
I
don't
mean,
need
just,
a vote,
just
just-
thumbs up, I mean, we'd like to actually send something out to parents to see, where the interest lies to the students and the parents, so that we can kind of get a feel for the numbers, and then find out about transportation, and then figure out how many members we have. I mean, we do have 2 district vans, obviously need somebody to drive those, but, again, if we have people in far out places that really want to take advantage of it, again, we're talking with some other organizations to try to make that possible too, so. So I think, Eric would like to, move forward with it and get communication out as early as tomorrow, so that we could possibly start this up next Monday and then report back to you at the end of May about how many students we're serving.
Can I make one more suggestion, or at least have the rest of the board chime in on what they think? As a parent, I get those communications. Is it possible for the board, when those letters to go out, to get a copy, not to correct it or judge it or any of that, but just to know, so that if a constituent should contact one of us, that we just know what the communication looks like. I know Lou and I and Jamie and Anita get that, but not everyone does. That would be, what do you guys think, or if you even care?
That's good.
And if there was a possibility of solving the transportation issue, and there's a cost for that, that would be part of the federal additional supplemental money, just to make it like there too, so that wouldn't be an impact on any budget.
Good point.
Okay, so I think without a vote, I think we're giving you the thumbs up, Eric, to go forward and get the rest of your ducks lined up and hopefully launch this as quickly as you can.
Great. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, we're almost there. 11.10. We have first reading on 2 board policies. IHBEA, which is the program for English language learners. It strikes out the LOU plan, and it puts the LOU plan back in there. Okay. And then second is KJA relations with booster groups. If anybody had any questions, I mean, I have just a quick question on the KJA. The policy in the end says that the board reserves the right to revoke the approval of any booster group, but unless it's in a different piece of policy, I don't see where we approve the activities of a booster group. So, I mean, if someone could just take a look at that, maybe it's in a different policy. We can't, it just seems to me we can't revoke the right if we didn't give them the right to begin with. So, any other questions on those 2? They'll come back at the end of the May meeting for the end of May meeting for action. 12.0, we have the second reading of the budget Monday, May 3rd. It'll be done remotely here in this room. Hopefully everyone can get here. That's the night where we will vote to approve the budget, and
That's
Deb,
next Monday.
next month. And Deb will have warrants for us to sign, which go out to the towns.
And that's at 8 a.m.?
No.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. May 3rd? Monday.
Oh, I saw May 6th. I'm sorry.
Finance committee.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No.
Oh, shocking. Good. I'm so happy.
Okay, I suspect that finance committee May 6th will be a to be determined if it's necessary. And then we have our regular board meeting May 24th. So I will, unless anybody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
We'll entertain it.
I'll entertain a way.
Well,
I have a motion by Lou.
I was gonna ask one more quick question. Do you think we'll be able to squeeze in a meeting at the new high school before the end of the year?
I think that our plan, we're not looking at next Monday, but we are, right? We're looking at the end of the month, May 1, that we're gonna move from this place to a new building. We're just, we need a little bit more time, but Damien's been working behind the scenes and I think we'll be ready for the 24th.
Great.
Probably in that main conference room, right? That's what we're looking at.
Thinking of probably the larger spaces that we have available.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll make sure that we get that out to you and to the, so everybody knows where we're going and all.
Would that be for the public?
No, I don't think so at this point. It depends on where we're going, but I think, probably, especially the first time, it probably would just be us and then, it depends on this situation and everything, and where we are located in there. So. But I think the technology will be better and just a nicer place, obviously. So, and our plan for next year is to be at the high school for every meeting if we can.
Okay, so we have a motion, but not a second. A motion from Lou, second from Warner. This is a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Steve.
It's gonna be the heaviest budget